girls are helpless out here in the West.
Ha! That's a good one.
20 more filthy secrets of Wild West saloons, girls' very intimate affairs. Welcome back to Vintage TV, where you will enter the untamed world of the Wild West. And boy, do we have a treat for you today. We're about to spill 20 more filthy secrets of those daring saloon girls and their oh-so-intimate affairs. So saddle up and get ready for a wild ride. Number 20. Customer etiquette. In the Wild West, the harsh Puritan sanctions were not as practical as in America's more conservative Eastern counterpart. And though the proper ladies still labeled those who didn't share their values by dress, behavior, sexual ethics as disgraceful, the shady ladies of the West were generally tolerated by other women as a necessary evil. California 49ers labeled these women with names such as ladies of the line and sporting women, while the Cowboys dubbed them soiled doves. Among the many trails of Kansas, common terms included daughters of sin, fallen frails, doves of the roost, and nymphs du prairie. Other nicknames for these women, who were as much a part of the Old West as were the outlaws, cowboys, and miners, were scarlet ladies, fallen angels, frail sisters, fair bells, and painted cats, among dozens of others.
First you get the land, then you get the money, then you get the power.
The biggest difference in the American West was the presence of girls in saloons. This was unheard of east of the Missouri River, except in German beer halls, where the daughters or wives of the owners often served as barmaids and waitresses. There were two types of bad girls in the West. The worst types, according to the proper women, were the many painted ladies who made their living by offering paid sex in the numerous brothels, parlor houses, and cribs of the western towns. The second type of bad girl was the saloon and dance hall woman, who, contrary to some popular thinking, were generally not prostitutes. This tended to occur only in the very shabbiest class of saloons. Though the respectable ladies considered the saloon girls fallen, most of these women wouldn't be caught dead associating with an actual prostitute. Number 19. They were performers. A saloon or dance hall girl's job was to brighten the evenings of the many lonely men of the western towns. In the Old West, men usually outnumbered women by at least 3-1, sometimes more, as was the case in California in 1850, where 90% of the population was male. Starved for female companionship, the saloon girl would sing for the men, dance with them, and talk to them, inducing them to remain in the bar, buying drinks and patronizing the games. Not all saloons employed saloon girls, such as in Dodge City's north side of Front Street, which was the respectable side, where both saloon girls and gambling were barred and featured music and billiards as the chief amusements to accompany drinking. Most saloon girls were refugees from farms or mills, lured by posters and handbills advertising high wages, easy work, and fine clothing. Many were widows or needy women of good morals, forced to earn a living in an era that offered few means for women to do so. Earning as much as $10 per week, most saloon girls also made a commission from the drinks they sold. Whiskey sold to the customer was generally marked up 30 to 60% over its wholesale price. Common drinks bought for the girls would only be cold tea or colored sugar water served in a shot glass. However, the customers were charged the full price of whiskey, which could range from 10 to 75 cents a shot. Most saloon girls were considered good women by the men they danced and talked with, often receiving lavish gifts from admirers. In most places, the proprieties of treating the saloon girls as ladies was strictly observed, as much because Western men tended to revere all women as because the women or the saloon keeper demanded it. Any man who mistreated these women would quickly become a social outcast, and if he insulted one, he would very likely be killed. Number 18. Limited jobs. Some of the reasons why women entered prostitution during the Wild West are probably not a lot different than it is today. However, with limited opportunities in the 19th century, Many had little choice where they were abandoned by their husbands or stranded in Old West towns when their spouse was killed. Some just had no other skills to provide a means of support. Others were the daughters of prostitutes, already tainted in the business. The saddest reason was that women were seduced by a cad, lost their virginity, or were raped. At the time, these women were seen as lost and there was no hope for them, virtually forcing them into prostitution. Though the proper ladies ignored the existence of brothels, realistically, they admitted the necessity to distract the attention of men from pursuing their daughters and relieving them of their obligation. The old homestead was the most popular house in Cripple Creek, Colorado during its heyday. Pearl de Verre, its famous madam, sometimes charged as much as $1,000 to entertain the men of the district. Today, it continues to stand as a museum. But Kathy Wazer Alexander, at the time, Victorian prudence had long taught decent women that the sexual act was solely to bear children. She was taught that she shouldn't respond in any way and that her man should be indulged from time to time, but best to be avoided whenever possible. The men of the West were often intimidated by the decent women who laid down the moral law and found themselves much more comfortable with the painted ladies who allowed themselves to be who they were. Virtually every Old West town had at least a couple of shady ladies who were the source of much gossip. Sometimes she would hide behind the chore of taking in the laundry as a seamstress or running a boarding house. But often, she would flaunt her profitable bordello by prancing through the streets in her fine clothing, much to the chagrin of the proper women of the town. Such was the case of Pearl de Verre of Cripple Creek, Colorado.
A lot of people didn't approve of the way I lived my life, but you can't say they didn't respect the woman I was.
Prostitution was a booming business. Though it was illegal almost everywhere, it was impossible to suppress, so the law generally did little more than try to confine the parlors and brothels to certain districts of the community. Others regularly fined the brothels and painted ladies as a type of taxation. But otherwise, the businesses thrived with little intervention from the law. Shady ladies were so numerous in some frontier towns that some historians have estimated they made up 25% of the population, often outnumbering the decent women 25-1. As the Old West towns grew, they often had several bordellos staffed by 4 or 5 women. Usually, painted ladies were between the ages of 14 and 30, with an average age of 23. Some high-class courtesans often demanded as much as $50 from their clients. However, rates on the frontier generally ranged from $5 at nicer establishments to $1 or less for most ladies of the night. Sometimes they would split their earnings with the madam of the parlor house, while others paid a flat fee per night or week. Number 17. Job hazards. Most of the girls had come west from farms and mills seeking a better life, the opportunities that the West had to offer. A great deal of them were widows who, without a husband to support them, had to work for a living. Unfortunately, the Victorian age didn't offer a great deal of employment opportunities for women. In fact, the men of culture acted like women were brainless. The only legitimate opportunities for a woman's employment were cooking, cleaning, or washing clothes, all backbreaking work. That's not to say that being a saloon girl was easy. A high probability of a violent death was a certain job hazard. Most of the ladies carried small pistols or daggers to protect themselves from overzealous patrons. The girls were encouraged to dance with the men, then get the men to buy them drinks. The men would pay regular prices for the ladies' drinks, though the women would be secretly served cold tea or colored water. A practice my deputy husband tells me is still in use today. Who knew? The girls got a commission off the drinks and set a salary for the week. They were also discouraged from spending too much time with one patron, as the saloon owners lost a lot of employees to marriage.
Do you guys get compensated well for the job that you do? Do you get paid well?
Honestly, pretty well. I can't complain.
Number 16. The stink of the Old West. A picture may say 1,000 words, but it cannot convey the acrid odors of the Old West. Back then, personal hygiene habits were definitely not what they are today. For one thing, bathing, brushing of teeth, washing of hair, and other healthy habits took place far less often. As writer Meg Mims points out on her blog, Cowboy Kisses, Shampoo wasn't even invented until the late 1800s. Women were relegated to using plain soap to wash their hair, and that only occurred once a month or so. Most good-time girls kept a basin in their rooms, since cleanliness was important to both them and their customers. Deodorant and toothpaste were rare too, according to Elena Sandage. Toothpaste wasn't available in a tube until 1892, and deodorant wasn't invented until 1888. Most folks just had to make do with stinky pits and privates. Then there was makeup, which was basically taboo among proper women, but used by both actresses, saloon girls, and prostitutes. Author Sylvia McDaniel verifies these women used small pots containing carminic acid and aluminum or calcium salts to color their cheeks and lips. They also used hair dye. Outside of their realm, however, shady ladies wore only enough cosmetics, like face powder, to make their skin appear as beautiful and natural as possible. But not until after 1900, according to the Old Farmer's Almanac, did manufactured eyebrow pencils, eyeshadow, face powder, and lipstick become all the rage.
Smells like funnel cakes and manure.
Number 15. Different backgrounds. Saloon girls were a diverse group of women who worked in saloons, bars, and brothels in the late 19th century and early 20th century. They came from various backgrounds, including immigrants, women seeking financial independence, and those who had limited options for employment. Saloon girls were often stereotyped as prostitutes, but many of them were not. They worked as waitresses, dancers, singers, and musicians, and some even owned their own saloons. The saloon, serving as a hub of social life in many Western towns, provided a platform for these women to showcase their talents. Whether engaging in lively conversations with patrons, dazzling them with dance performances, or serenading them with music, saloon girls contributed significantly to the vibrant atmosphere of the Wild West. While some faced social ostracization, others found acceptance and support within their communities. The dynamics of the relationships between saloon girls, patrons, and law enforcement were complex, reflecting the broader social tensions of the time. Number 14. Freedom comes with a cost. Saloon gals might have openly defied the law, but they were required to follow rules and protocols set by their employers. Money was the name of the game, and a girl who couldn't make it was shown the door. In the Klondike and many other places, dance hall girls were directed to get their customers to drink. For each dollar spent, the girls were given an ivory disc, according to Moondance, but metal tokens were sometimes used too. The girls dropped these items into their stockings throughout the evening, resulting in some mighty lumpy legs, cashing their stash in the next day. Legends of America verified dances typically cost 75 cents to $1, and the girls generally split their take with the owner of the place. In the case of prostitutes, women either split their earnings with the madam, who usually provided room and board, or paid her daily, weekly, or monthly rent. Some girls lived elsewhere and only rented their rooms by the night, while others lived in the brothel full-time. No matter her job description, most saloon girls and working girls were required to pay regular fines and license fees to the city coffer. In St. Louis, Missouri, writer James Wunsch reports the Social Evil Ordinance required permits for all working girls. Also, much like other cities, prostitutes were only allowed to work with a clean bill of health issued by a city physician, whom the women also paid. Number 13. Saloon girls' issues. Because working girls had easy access to alcohol and drugs, it was not difficult to become addicted to either one. As author Jeremy Agnew points out, the incidence of mental depression was high among prostitutes, so many of them turned to drugs and alcohol to relieve the loneliness and unhappiness of being far from family and friends. Christmas was especially hard, resulting in an increase in suicides. Curious Historian states most dance hall girls drank only colored water with their customers. Unfortunately, however, some pimps and madams encouraged addiction as a means of controlling their girls. Only high-class madams kept strict rules about their girls' recreational use of drugs and alcohol. Famous female alcoholics include roustabout Calamity Jane, whom writer James D. McLaren found was drunk much of the time as she ran around the Wild West. Jane made a living any way she could, from working as a dance hall girl to playing the part of prostitute with a number of men. She also cooked on occasion, but it was her drunken escapades that caught the attention of newspapers and later historians. Then there was Celia Ann Maddie Blaylock, a working girl who became gunfighter Wyatt Earp's companion before he dumped her for actress and possible prostitute Josephine Marcus. According to Mark Nothat at Arizona Central, Earp cast Maddie aside when she became addicted to laudanum for her migraines. Maddie went back to selling sex and later committed suicide. Number 12. Many saloon girls sought vengeance. Women may have sought vengeance against the men who wronged them, but violence against the fairer sex was more common. Sexual assault was rampant in the Old West, with few laws to protect women, especially working girls. Writer Nancy Williams is one of many who claim sexual assault was prevalent in the Old West. Back then, women didn't report rape because they knew their attackers would never be pursued, she wrote. History is unfortunately rife with reports of women being assaulted or killed. Historian Ann M. Butler tells of Molly Scott, whose brute of a husband shot her to death one night and fled, leaving other prostitutes to dress the victim for her funeral. Similarly, young scholar Emma R. Merrick wrote about Madame Belgian Jenny Bouters of Jerome, who moved to another town and was accosted by her ex-boyfriend in 1905. The man shot Jenny 3 times, then took time to reload his gun before he saw she was not dead yet. The villain actually moved her head so that he could get a better shot and then deliberately fired the pistol into her head. Writer Loretta Louise tells of one madam who exacted revenge when threatened. When a man with venereal disease was denied entry to Jenny Bright's brothel in Washington, he tried to hit her. The madam produced a revolver and shot the man neatly through the heart. Jenny left town until the murder blew over. Number 11. What happens if they get pregnant? One of the worst things a working girl could experience was an unwanted pregnancy, which put her out of work and made her business difficult. Boston University reported on one archaeological dig of a brothel, which revealed syringes used to inject mercury, arsenic, and vinegar into the body to induce abortions or treat diseases. The owner of the house, Mrs. Lake, later married a doctor who also prescribed medicines for treating sexually transmitted diseases and inducing abortions. But the women's biggest hurdle was the Comstock Act of 1873, which not only banned birth control items and information, but also terminations. Thus, women had to come up with their own homemade remedies to keep from getting pregnant. The true number of infants produced by working girls in the Old West will never be known. Terminations were never reported because of the Comstock Act. Ann M. Butler wrote that stillborns and fetuses were often quietly disposed of or buried without record. In February of 1877, Mary Keene, along with Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Wicks, was charged in Laramie, Wyoming for failing to provide a proper burial for a fetus. The child was probably Mary's. Other women, such as Laura Evans of Colorado, were able to raise their children, sometimes out of the prostitution realm. In an interview with her great-grandsons, the men verified Laura's daughter, Lucille, didn't talk about her mother, but just described her mother as being a landlady. Number 10. More problems. Working girls could succumb to any number of maladies, from complications of childbirth to violence to disease, or even suicide. And as the Dodge City Times reminded its readers, according to writers Carol Leonard and Isidore Willem, the frail humanity will respond to the demand of the depleted city exchequer, remembering that the wages of sin is death. But the cause of death was rarely old age. Suicides were common. Author Jeremy Agnew writes that during its boom years, 40 suicide attempts were reported in Virginia City, Nevada, 19 of which were successful. One of the most tragic suicides was that of Eleanora Dumont, aka Madam Mustache, a sometime madam and gambler who died outside of Bodie, California after losing all of her money. At least some ladies, usually madams, were able to retire. In her thesis, Angels for Sale, The History of Prostitution in Los Angeles, 1880 to 1940, Anne Marie Cuistra writes of Madame Cora Phillips, the 24-carat Queen of Bohemia, who ran several high-class parlor houses. Cora was able to retire with a fortune. The most famous madam of all in America is no doubt Sally Stanford. Writer Ray Alexander reported Sally was not only a successful madam for decades in the San Francisco area, but that after she retired, she turned to politics. After 5 tries, Sally was victorious in being elected to the city council and later mayor of Sausalito. "We sinners never give up," she quipped. Number 9. Gambling connections. Because the saloon was usually one of the first and bigger buildings within many new settlements, it became common to use it as a public meeting place before the real town halls entered the scene. For example, Judge Roy Bean had a combination saloon and courtroom from which he ran his business and ordered hangings. Downeyville, California, had a popular saloon which also served as the office of the local justice of the peace. Number 8. Gossip and networking. In the bustling atmosphere of Wild West saloons, saloon girls served not only as entertainers, but also as information hubs. Their interactions with patrons provided them with insights into the lives, secrets, and rumors circulating within the community. As purveyors of both libations and social connections, saloon girls became conduits for gossip, exchanging whispers about local events, relationships, and business dealings. This role inadvertently turned them into valuable nodes in the social network of the Wild West, as their ability to discreetly share information made them instrumental in connecting individuals and spreading news throughout the community. In a time when communication channels were limited, saloon girls played an unexpected but crucial role in facilitating social connections and disseminating information in the rapidly expanding settlements of the American frontier. Number 7. Sex work could take place in brothels or on the street. People might assume saloon girls worked under the noses of the local authorities. Sex work was a legitimate form of income in the Old West, though, and many communities were unincorporated territories without proper governance. Some historians suggest about 25% of the population participated in sex work, usually in brothels or parlor houses. The parlor houses advertised their services with hanging red lanterns and often included game rooms or dancing for those anticipating service. Women in these establishments were protected by bouncers,
and a great big puddle of blood.
Whereas women on the streets had to fend for themselves. Sometimes, women who aged out of traditional desirability moved into small houses and continued to work for the madams who previously employed them. Number 6. Creative pseudonyms. Saloon girls sometimes used fancy names to make themselves more interesting. These names were like nicknames, but special for their work in the saloons. Instead of using their real names, they chose creative and exotic ones. This made them seem more mysterious and added a bit of excitement to their jobs. The special names helped create a certain image and added to the fun and charm of the Wild West saloon scene. Number 5. More than an entertainer. Saloons have become synonymous with our perception of the Wild West. When we think of a saloon, images of a long oak bar might come to mind. Behind the bar sits copious amounts of alcohol that serve to outlaws, cowboys, and miners scattered about the room. We might see a flirtatious woman walking around the saloon once in a while, but our thoughts mainly consist of male-dominant, whiskey-drinking men whose violent temperaments might get them into trouble from time to time. Though we must not let our predominant male Westerners fuel our understanding of what old saloons were like in the Wild West. Typically, proper women were excluded from stepping forth into a saloon, but other types of women were welcome. It was common to see saloon girls or prostitutes mingling with customers. It was through a saloon that men could let loose and be completely enthralled by the lustful entertainment of alluring saloon women. Interestingly enough, saloons functioned as more than just places to drink and enjoy the presence of women. They offered lodging, food, pool, billiards, gambling, card playing, and sometimes prostitution.
Oh, he's so graceful.
Yeah. Sir.
Oh, he's so graceful.
The role that saloon girls played in society goes beyond the provision of entertainment. In this blog entry, I'm going to take an extensive look at what these roles were and how saloon girls reshaped the gender boundaries of men and women in the Old West. It is important to understand that saloon girls were completely different than prostitutes. Though some saloon girls did offer paid sexual favors, saloon girls and prostitutes occupied a separate realm in the American West. Prostitutes were looked down upon by proper women and men alike. However, saloon girls were not. Though some proper women lacked any respect for saloon girls, it was expected that men treated these women with politeness and courtesy while in a saloon. Number 4. Photographic Studios. Saloon girls sometimes had their pictures taken in special studios. These photos added to how people saw the Wild West. The pictures showed the colorful and exciting life in saloons, giving a glimpse of the times. The photographic studios helped create a visual culture that captured the spirit of the Wild West, making the stories of saloon girls a part of the history we can see in pictures today. These photographic portraits, often staged in studios, provided a unique window into the world of saloon girls. Posed in their elaborate attire, these images contributed significantly to the visual narrative of the Wild West, offering a glimpse into the lives and personalities of these women who played a distinctive role in the cultural landscape. These photographs, with their vivid details, continue to be a valuable historical record, preserving the legacy and allure of the saloon girl era for generations to come. They had to be protected. Given the challenges they faced, certain saloon girls depended on the safeguarding of either the saloon owner or law enforcement. The nature of their profession, sometimes accompanied by societal stigma and potential risks, necessitated this protection. Whether from unruly patrons or external judgments, having a form of security became essential for the well-being of these women working in the Wild West saloons. The protective measures provided by the saloon proprietor or law enforcement helped create a safer environment, allowing the saloon girls to navigate the complexities of their profession with a greater sense of security. Number 2. Customer loyalty. For saloon girls, building customer loyalty was essential for a steady income. Regular patrons, those who returned often, formed a crucial part of their clientele. Developing relationships with these customers ensured a consistent flow of income through tips, drinks, and entertainment. The ability to create a welcoming and engaging atmosphere contributed to repeat business. Saloon girls often relied on charm, conversation, and personalized service to cultivate a loyal customer base. This practice not only secured financial stability, but also played a key role in shaping the social dynamics within the saloon, contributing to a sense of community and familiarity. Number 1. Marriage. The best a working girl could hope for was to marry and leave the profession for good. Emma R. Merrick cites a respectable woman named Mary Matthews of Colorado who observed, "Sometimes a good citizen, wealthy and respectable, marries his wife from some of these corrupt houses, and he seldom ever regrets his choice. He builds her up to be respected and respectable. I have heard of several cases." Likewise, according to writers Vardis Fisher and Opal Laurel Holmes, Denver Madam Maddie Silks told others, "My girls made good wives. They understood men and how to treat them, and they were faithful to their husbands. So I knew they made good wives." Author Helen M. Lewis theorized men were willing to marry saloon girls and prostitutes largely due to the shortage of women in the early West. And there you have it, folks. 20 more filthy secrets of Wild West saloon girls and their very intimate affairs. But hey, we've only scratched the surface of this fascinating chapter in history. So if you want to learn even more, Be sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for future videos.